meeting of the Historic Site Preservation Board. Could we have a roll call, please?
Jim Iserman, he had said he wasn't going to be here. William Scott.
Present.
James Hayton.
Present.
Ron Chesbeck.
Present.
Lee Bledsoe said he wasn't going to be here. Chev Rush.
Present.
John Williams.
Present.
Thank you.
Could we have a report of the posting of the agenda, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The agenda was posted last Thursday in accordance with state and local procedures.
Okay. Any public comments at this time? We have a 3-minute limit for any public comments. Seeing as there are no public comments, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Did everyone receive and review the minutes? And are there any comments on the minutes or corrections?
Move for approval of minutes.
Do I hear a second for the?
Second that.
All in favor of approval of the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Minutes are approved as presented. Under the chairman's report, I just have one thing to report, and that is that Board Member Isherman and I met with city staff regarding the cameras at the Frey Fire Station number 2. And this board had approved, the two of us acting as a subcommittee, to look at putting 3 of the dome-type cameras at the fire station. Based on city staff recommendation, what we did approve was 2 dome-type cameras to be placed on the left side of the building, and 1 of the larger 22-inch cameras in the back of the building out of sight. And the fire chief seemed to be happy with that, and I think that was a good compromise. So that has been accomplished, and I hope that city staff will follow up on the promise to put the plaque up on the building. So thank you for working with us. We have an architectural approval request, case 3.2098, application by Catherine Mailer for a landscape plan at 2311 North Indian Canyon Drive. Do we have, Catherine, would you like to join us? We have.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just give a brief introduction. This was a, this is the Miller House, a Class 1 historic site, and basically staff and the board have been working together with the property owner, Catherine Mailer, with regards to various improvements that she has proposed for the property. Today we're looking at a landscape plan, and what I'm going to pass out now is sort of the original site design that Catherine had given to us. I guess it was as proposed by Richard Neutra. And the difference between, I guess, this landscape plan and the original is this one is probably, I suppose, a little bit sparser than the original plan. But otherwise, I'm just going to let Catherine talk about her landscape plan.
What I wanted to achieve with this plan was to basically leave the house and bare, just around the house, and then have the privacy factor from around the borders. So looking in, I get privacy, but once people are in the place, they can see the house and it's set off. I noticed looking at pictures, this was taken in 1940, that the tamarisk trees had really grown up, and there were a lot of plants right next to the house that really grew up very, very close to the house, and that's not what I really wanted. I wanted to set the house off, and that's another one from the 40s, where you can see the house, you can barely see the house because of all the plants. And I thought it was nicer to keep plants away from the house and set the house off with the plants. So from the wall inwards, there's a swimming pool here, the original lawn, just as it was, with the original flagstones. Oh, sorry. So that the original black and white photographic view from here will be exactly the same as it was. Also, this 25% viewing corridor designated by your board will still be open, so people from here can see that 25% of the house. But around the pool area and the seating areas, there will be privacy. Warren, do you want to? So this is Warren Miller. the landscaping company who did them.
My idea was to be able to visualize the house from the view area that you know, we built the gates, and that was basically the corridor that we had decided it would be visible, and it's most likely the best view of the house. Catherine wanted the privacy in this area to give her the privacy in the pool that she required. A little mounding, we're going to raise that up and give it a little more desert look. No plant material around the house, so to speak. There's an accentual, you know, ocotillo, and there, I think, in this area right here, which it doesn't show on the plan, is a couple of Texas Rangers in that area. But for the most part, we're going to leave the house exposed to the view corridor. All of this is pretty much desert or low water use type plants. We've got the trees that are Palo Verdes and mesquites and some acacias, which are all fairly low water use.
How much of that goes into the right-of-way?
Trying to stay away from a lot of cactus, but in this particular area here, just for the I think more for security reasons, we did put some cactus along the front, along the drive there, so that they can, you know, look through. But I've had problems with other architectural homes where they don't necessarily just want to look; they want to come in, and so that's kind of given a little bit more security in that area. A lot of boulders. And this is all going to be gravel in the drive and you know, decorative sand, or, you know, just the native sand that was there originally. So we do some
Build a
grading.
wall.
Privacy hedge, and then what some of the big trees are in the back.
These here or these?
Yeah,
These are just. This is a citrus grove back in here.
Which is as it,
Existing?
No.
it was there originally.
Proposed, and yes, there was citrus back in some of the photographs that I've seen. There was citrus. There's an acacia, stenophylla, mainly to just kind of take the visual off of the telephone pole that's back in the back there. Along the side here, there's a two-story apartment complex next door, and these are acacia salignus along here that are good wind-resistant plants, and will help to give her a little privacy on that side.
Are those trees?
Yes, yes.
Look awfully close. What's the scale of that plant?
It's 8 scale. We planted them 6 feet apart. And
Is it tree form?
So yeah, well, it's a kind of a lacy tree. It's weeping. It's called the blue leaf wattle, and it's a weeping lacy tree. And you know, planting them that close will give her that privacy. Otherwise, you know, something more dense might need to be done. But I figured this would give that line of vision, take that line of vision out.
Yeah, my only comment on that is, you know, in the first 5 years, that'll be wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And then the trees will fight with one another, and you'll end up having to thin them, or you'll end up with trees that are not healthy.
Exactly.
I mean, they're, you know, planting trees 6 foot apart is awfully tight.
And
It
that-
usually results in a growing problem.
And that issue, you know, was something that we talked about, and yes, there may need to be thinning out at a later date.
Yeah.
She wanted to get that privacy so that she can, you know, enjoy the place in the 5 years that's, you know, that we're gonna have to evaluate it from that point on.
Yeah.
I don't know what else, you know, other than the fact that we're trying to keep it more desert and more traditional landscape planting as far as desert goes.
Can you show us exactly where the wall is now? Is that
Along the front.
the front wall?
This right here.
That's the wall, all the way up to the gate, correct?
Yeah, it jogs here, there's a gate here, and then there's a gate across here too.
And then those little round circles in front of the wall, those are cactus? Down at the lower right?
Here,
Uh-huh.
these are, they're agave Americana, the gray agave, and I've got a Hesperalo, and then I've got some Cordia or Cortadera, which is pampas grass. Mainly just large, you know, kind of to fill the area in, not to get it too detailed as far as clutter. And then we've got some agave perii, which is a lower growing plant there in the front.
And where had you envisioned putting the plaque?
Over here or here. Here's the numbers on the wall. So I was thinking either below that or over to the right here where it's clearer, because there's no nothing in front of the wall. There's a good clear wall span.
Mr.
Because
Chair,
just in driving by, the wall is in place and complete now, and it's about 6 feet, right? And the plants would be somewhat higher than that to give you more privacy?
On this side,
Uh-huh.
yes, but not this side.
No, that's
This
okay.
side they're low to enhance the wall. So the plaque could either go there, there, or there. Wherever it would go.
my suggestion is that when they complete the landscaping, that maybe the staff work with the applicant to locate the plaque so that the future plant growth won't obstruct it. And then we're just going to encourage the applicant and property owner to decide where she wants people to be, because wherever the plaque is, everybody will come up to the plaque. And if it's in the middle of the wall, they will tend to try to look over the wall at that location.
So nearer
And
to the
they'll
viewing
trample.
corridor area would be
Yeah,
better.
I would suggest you decide where you want people,
Right.
and then put the plaque there, because that's where the people are gonna go.
Good point.
And if they're gonna, you know, if it's in a landscape area, some people will trump right through it to get close to the plaque.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah,
We-
human nature is human nature.
Yes.
Any
That's
other
it?
questions?
Is the pool in? Or
No.
So it's gonna go in before the landscape?
No.
We're leaving this area open back to the pool. This is going to be our first phase in this area, lawn and the front here. And because of the need to put the pool in, we're going to leave this corridor open to get to that area.
I think it looks great.
I think it looks great as well. Thank you for all that hard work. Any other comments or questions or suggestions for Catherine? Do I hear a motion to approve this application as presented?
I'll move that the application be approved.
I'll second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? It's approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see that wasn't so difficult, was it?
Not for you.
Okay, thank you again for joining us. Moving on to item number 1 of our agenda items, the work program for 2003 and 2004. Where'd Doug go? Each of you should have gotten in your packet that was supplied an outline of the work program for 2003, as we agreed on some time ago. Did you get it? Okay. And looking on the back, which I had not seen before, this was new, what was approved, what was denied during 2002. And since that actually came before 2003, I wanted us just to review that, and I wanted to ask staff if they could tell us the status of the front door alteration at 800 North Palm Canyon Drive. Could we ask perhaps for a staff update at the next meeting on that? Because I don't know that that has actually been taken care of, has it?
That was a big issue.
Mr. Chairman, I missed that. I was talking to the applicant.
We were reviewing the work program for 2003 under agenda item number 1 on today's agenda. And I was pointing out that on the back we have what was approved and recommended and so forth for 2002. And there was one item, denied front door alteration at 800 North Palm Canyon Drive. And I was wondering what is the status of that, if that was corrected as the previous board had suggested, or
We
don't.
have not initiated legal proceedings against the property owner. We're trying to get the property owner to voluntarily comply. At one point, the property owner was going to sell the property, and we felt we might have better luck with a new property owner. But we'd have to sue him, essentially, at this point. Take him through the code enforcement process, which is equivalent to a lawsuit. So if the board's pleasure is to do that, I don't think we need to bring it back to you. And then the city attorney will decide if they pursue.
Okay, since we have a whole new board, and I was wondering if there's some way we could perhaps work with the property owner to get something that would be a little more desirable than what is currently there, or if that's not even an issue we want to deal with.
Okay. Well, my suggestion is if there are board members that know the property owner, they may want to just call, because previous attempts were unsuccessful.
Okay.
The property owner wants the building declassified and is very, very firm on that, on the basis that the building's been substantially altered over the years, and questions whether or not it should have been designated at all originally because of the alterations.
Perhaps we should just leave that one alone. Okay. All right. I just wanted to see what the status was, and that's where we are. Okay. Okay. Well, going back to the work program for 2003, we're still in, we do this on a calendar year, right, Doug? So we
Yes,
have.
sir.
Okay. Would you like to address that and talk a little about it for us?
Well, first item under funding, Kathy Marks is going to give you an update on a conference that she went to regarding funding. And it's really, I think, the first time, at least I can recall, the city actually went to a conference to talk about funding for historic preservation and other resources that might be available. The second item, master plan for historic preservation, is part of the general plan update, and you've had copies of that given to you. We've asked the board to take a look at that, and then as a part of our general plan update, we'll cycle back to the board and ask the board to really get into a focused review of that portion of the general plan. So we've started that review, and I think board member Scott is on the general plan steering committee, and can give you an update on that effort if he would like. I think the dynamics of that committee took a dramatic step forward relative to dynamics of the group at their last meeting. They went through a visioning process to develop a vision statement, and the work that they did was absolutely outstanding. And it really created a dynamic amongst the group where people that might not normally talk directly to one another started to have a dialogue. So it was kind of neat. But visioning processes are always very lengthy and challenging. And so it was a good 2-hour session. Do you want to give any more of an update?
No, we are at our next meeting, and everyone is invited to attend these meetings. The next meeting, I believe, will be on the 30th of October in this conference room at 5 p.m. Is it 5 p.m.? I think. And the steering committee is comprised of people from throughout the community, neighborhood groups, economic representatives, also from the Indian tribe. And as Doug said, we worked on a visioning statement. We're going to be refining that at the next meeting. And then we'll go into the next step as to how to achieve our visioning statement, and then start working on the master plan update.
About how many people are on that committee?
There are 24. Not everyone attends, but about that many.
We've had real good attendance. We've probably been averaging upwards of 18. So that, for a committee that large, that's really good. And the fact that it's such a diverse group, you always get an overlap of viewpoints. So, and that was the intent, to have a community-driven committee as opposed to one that was city-driven. The next item, Mr. Chairman, ordinance revision. We've talked about how to deal with the survey, that eventually that needs to be put into the ordinance, how to deal with the likelihood that we may have to consider, doesn't necessarily mean the board would have to recommend approval of, delisting, the undoing process that we've talked about. And then the city attorney and staff feel that there's probably some other areas that need to be clarified in the ordinance so that it's a little bit clearer as to what happens and various circumstances. We haven't really pushed the city attorney to deal with delisting, but that will come up, based upon what probably happens in the courts in the near-term future. Plaques, we've been working on plaquing, and our board member Rush has done a survey, and we're going to continue to try to get all the Class 1 sites plaqued, and then try to get new Class 1 plaque sites plaqued as soon as possible. Survey update, I think we're going to touch on that later in the meeting. Local, state, and national historic designations. Kathy, could you give an update on SHPO real quickly?
Sure. We have the Francis Stevens School nomination that is going before the State Historic Advisory Committee. I'm grabbing from my date here. It's November 7th, I believe. Here it is. November 7th, 2003. It's on the consent agenda or consent calendar, which is good. That means that basically SHPO has reviewed the nomination and approves it or gives their staff recommendation of approval. And then consequently, they'll give a brief slide presentation of that nomination plus others at the beginning of the meeting, and if no one has objected or objects at the time, then they are approved. So it's not a contentious nomination. So that's
Congratulations.
very good. Yes. That is, I'll tell you where this is going to be. It's going to be at the Pasadena City Hall Council Chambers at 9 a.m. on November 7th. So anyone's welcome to attend.
Okay, and then the next item on the work agenda was a historic preservation public information program. And this is something that we had envisioned as a board to work on in the early part of next year in conjunction with the survey, to try and talk with owners of buildings that are currently not designated, that are identified on the survey, particularly those 50 that are the most historically significant, and see if we can get them to start moving toward getting Class 1 designation. But that, I'm sure, will carry on to the work program for next year. So, any other comments on this year's work agenda? And then for next year, some of these we will obviously continue to. When do we need to have this in place, Doug? You want to speak to that? Or?
Yeah, we have to submit it to the city council in about mid-January, so the next 2 months. So if you have items you'd like to add in, we've got some items on your agenda that we would probably add in anyway, having to do with maybe expanding the public information program, and clarifying really what the board is actually doing there. And, if the board members have any other items, we can put them in.
Well, I'd encourage the board to think about those between now and the next meeting or two, and let's try and finalize that at the December meeting for the January presentation, something like that? Okay. Thank you. Item number 2 on the agenda, Media Outreach Subcommittee update. Board Member Rush.
Well, I don't have much to report on the media outreach front. One of the things that I'd like to put out there is that we meet with staff to establish maybe a timeline through the next 12 months of events that we, for instance, Francis Stevens, if that, when that process is completed. Also the survey finalization, and identified the opportunities for media outreach as they come available over the next 12 months. I think it would probably be a working document that would change as new things come up, but it would make sure that we are aware of those opportunities and are acting on them in accordance with, the time frame in which they're happening. And I was thinking in terms of what we were just discussing about the survey finalization, that should present several opportunities that we don't want to miss. So if we could, if I could contact staff outside of the meeting to possibly set up a time to meet, and we could discuss what some of those are, and I could develop a timeline from there. And I believe that's it.
Okay, thank you. I've been a little disappointed. I haven't seen anything in the papers at all about the survey in progress, but maybe we can somehow get information out when we finalize it. And get
Well, we did a press release and, tried to get the interest. And
we tried. I tried as well, so
Yeah.
I called a couple of people.
Nothing like a good controversy to get
Right.
the press interested.
Right.
If it's something that's just positive news and something that's going in the right direction, sometimes it's hard to get their attention. So next time we do that, we'll have to create a controversy.
That's right. Have somebody yell and scream about something. Item number 3, Historic Site Plaque Survey Update.
I'm not done with that.
Oh, I'm sorry, comments?
I think that there should be something. For one, I didn't see a press release, so I don't know what really went out. But how can it become more knowledgeable? What else can be done? Is that a crazy question? But isn't that what we're looking to do, to raise the awareness? And that's part of our job. I think.
One thing that going back to item number 2, just to cover that a little bit more, one thing we might consider doing, and I'd be willing to work with you on this, Shove, is if we start now working with Brian Joseph and people at the Desert Sun and try and set up a meeting with them and get them aware of exactly what we're doing. Now, my question is that something that we can do as board members, or is that something that the city would not want us to do?
You have to work with Lee Husfeld, who just ran through here for a dedication of the new fire station ARF unit at the airport. You have to coordinate with Lee before board and commissioners go out and initiate and engage the media. The city manager and the city council have to be aware of what you're doing in advance. Now, if it's a meeting issue, something that comes up on an agenda, obviously we can't do that. The challenge with the media is you can feed them all the information that you want, and when the issue comes on an agenda, depending on the news day, will influence whether or not you get coverage. And then if they miss it by a couple of days, it's gone. They don't go backwards very often. But I think what we can do is maybe, with Lee's help, is start setting the framework maybe for a nice article, as opposed to just a news bulletin, or a couple of columns based upon something the board did, or what was on your agenda, but talking about what the survey is, what it means. I think we might want to layer in the Francis Stevens, the first state designation, and try to give them a story, because good news items really have to be pitched, for them to say we're going to put the effort into a real story, as opposed to 2 columns and 8 paragraphs and 3 quotes, because that's normally what they're looking for. And if there's not something stirring, it's hard to create an article out of that. But maybe in the local section, a Sunday section, something like that, we might be able to work something in.
Well, and also in the meeting that I referred to earlier, the future meeting, if we could involve Lee in that meeting, that would enable us to have a better idea of what our, what her role would be, what ours would be, and what the best avenues are for being in touch with the press and on what issues. So if we could include her in that meeting, that would be great.
What we may want to do is just have a meeting. We'll bring in, Rick from Channel 17, and we can talk about what Rick and his staff is capable of doing. We've had some meetings with them about doing, a photographic piece that can run, on 17 as part of the normal programming, and really maybe just start putting together, a more detailed work program schedule, like you indicated, and that probably wouldn't take us much more than 30 or 40 minutes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Other questions, comments? Okay, agenda item number 3, Historic Site Plaque Survey Update. Board Member Rush.
This is a revised version of the site audit or plaque audit that you saw, I believe, 2 meetings ago. Just to draw your attention to the changes here, the Francis Stevens School, which was inadvertently left off in the last version, is now here. It's located at the end of the list on the first page. In the second section, I believe based on Board Member Scott's recommendation, I've added a subset here at the end, which are pending plaques. So this would include the Grace Lewis Miller House and the Idris House, which are the 2 latest designations, and they are pending, the completion of actually, the Idris House, I know there is a reception and around the designation being awarded. Is the plaque going to be presented at that time? No.
Doubtful.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we'll have it there.
It's
Okay.
on the 18th, so.
Yeah.
So those are really the changes here. I think this is going to require another meeting with staff to work through this document and coordinate efforts for contacting homeowners, especially those listed in the not visible section. We'll need to discuss, what our messaging would be to them in terms of, where plaques are installed but not visible, where plaques aren't installed at all, and coordinating that. So that would be a second meeting that I would like to have with staff to move forward on this.
Are there, I think I noticed that there are 2 on the not visible list that are already Mills Act participants. Don't
That's
they
correct.
have to have a visible?
My understanding from our
Aren't they
last,
required?
discussion is that is part of the criteria for Mills Act compliance. And I did see when we spoke earlier, or we looked at the work program in 2002, that there was, under recommended historic site designation, the Mills Act agreement was approved for the Carrie Perosi House, for instance. So that may be something that we want to discuss in terms of if, another property comes forward for Mills Act designation, then, how do we ensure that the plaque is visible, and that's part of the approval process before the consent is given. Doug, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I agree. I mean, on the Perosi House, it was just a matter of the installer and the homeowner picking a suitable rock, and the most suitable rock was not a visible location, and I think they lost the priority of having it visible. The Kaufman Harris House, I think we may end up talking to them about switching from the bronze to the brushed aluminum plaque, and that may help with one of their concerns, going back to the original plaque. And I know they just get bombarded with people that want to see the facility, and so it's a delicate balance of public versus private relationships on that house. So we'll have to do that. Some of the properties that are not visible, we'd have to really go back and double check and see if they were ever officially plaqued. Cork and Bottle, I don't recall, but that was really designated a long time ago. And the other ones will just have to go out and probably work with the owners to dig through the bushes, find out where they're at. And we might find that some of them really haven't been plaqued and put them down to the pending list. So we'll do a little records research.
And in terms of the cost of plaquing for those that are already designated but without a plaque, what's the general cost of plaquing, including the creation of it and placement of it?
It's about $268 for the plaque,
Mhm.
plus shipping.
Okay,
That's a small plaque.
okay.
Yeah.
And the yearly budget amount for the plaques is $10,000, is that right?
Yeah, we've been getting about 10,000, so we have plenty of plenty of funds to do the plaques. I mean, I'm not worried about that. The larger plaques are closer to $1,000. The city used to have an employee that really volunteered to go out and do the installations, and John retired. And I'm not sure we're going to find another person willing to volunteer to go onto private property and install plaques. John had an exceptional ability to get these things mounted and in a way you could not pull them off. And I'm not sure we'll find somebody that can really replace, his capable work. But we'll try. If we have to get into an installer, the cost of plaques will go up, and I would suspect several $100s to, by the time you get somebody to mobilize, go out, find, select, bring all the equipment in, do the work. John used to just pull up in his truck with a planner and the owner, and and within 30 minutes to an hour, the plaque was installed.
If I'm the only one that might say, again, I think this is something we're doing here to count on a John that we knew that drove up in a truck. Can't we have a person that really does do it and maybe get an installer or get somebody so that we do know that all these are really happening the right way?
Well,
Instead of small town, can we upgrade this system?
Well, I
so
don't
it's
want to
more
go out
appropriate?
for a bid and have a contractor on board to install infrequent plaques. What I may very well do
Why
is...
not?
is
If I don't... if
Well,
we
it doesn't
don't-
happen very often. So, I mean, the contract's going to go stale. And what I might do is be a little bit more creative and call John at home. See if he would like to be
Yeah,
a
let's
handyman
get him
for me.
over, yeah.
So we'll get, the installation of the plaques is not the problem. That I can assure you, we will get plaques, installed, and, we'll try to do a better job in making sure that they have long-term visibility. Because I think in the past, several times plaques were released to owners to install. And at that point, I'm not sure we could guarantee you where they went, on the property. But I have confidence that the plaques are available. So we'll go back and start working through this and work with Board Member Rush to take a look at how we do it. And, I think what we're doing with the newer designations, we're getting them plaqued fairly quickly. And the only reason the Miller House is not plaqued is they wanted to complete the wall and make sure they understood the best location. And, we don't want to move these things around. You have to drill the walls, and, it's an invasive process to get them mounted correctly on a wall.
Well, I know there are two unplaqued sites, one being the Ingleside Inn, where we had a promise from the people who were doing the renovation. I haven't seen anything happen there, so I don't know how far that's gone. And then also the fire station. So hopefully by the next meeting, could staff perhaps give us an update on what they've found out, at least about?
Yeah, we will try. We're shorthanded right now, and Kathy and Jing are getting pushed and pulled in what they have time to do, so we will try between now and the next meeting.
Just maybe an update on which plaques were actually created or what the records indicate. If that would be possible, that'd be great. Any other comments on plaques? Thank you very much for your work on that. Item number 4, California Preservation Foundation's Incentive for Historic Preservation Projects Workshops. Kathy.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, this was a very interesting but very intense one-day workshop in Berkeley about 2 weeks ago. I gathered a lot of information. There were very few handouts, but we did get a CD-ROM, which, then you consequently can download, that kind of thing. This was basically organized in a way where a lot of the federal incentives were presented in the morning, and then the afternoon we had presentations by other cities in the state of California that gave presentations on their local incentive programs. Some cities are very well organized and truly have handouts, etc., brochures, etc. I have a couple examples here, but in the name of time, I'm not going to go through, nor do I have actually the knowledge to go through these one by one and describe these. This was definitely an information gathering. I have the information that would be available to anyone, but to describe these would take a long time, and I don't have that opportunity today. Some of them are very specific to National Register nominations. So on this little handout that I gave to you all, I tried to make it clear as to which ones were probably applicable for the city of Palm Springs and which ones would not be at this time, because we really don't have any National Register nominations except for one archaeological site for the tribe. So basically, but very interestingly, if we did, there are some unbelievable funding programs that work on the national level with property developers, people that are willing to come in, put money and back historic preservation, restorations, rehabilitations, because they want the tax credits. So they're like a very large scale development proposals, and a lot of these were talking in the millions of dollars. And so it was very interesting and certainly could be something that may interest who knows whom here down the line. The second half of the day and the local and this would be moving on to the second page of your printout, where it says local incentives. The city of Monterey had a very interesting program, and I thought it was probably most applicable to what we would be looking at. They wanted to do the most with the least amount of money, and that's typical for any mid-sized community such as Palm Springs. So they utilize different components, zoning incentives. That means, okay, you have a single-family historic home in a single-family residential district. You want to preserve that home. The owner is at loss because perhaps it needs a lot of work, etc. So they had flexibility in some of their zoning standards to allow, for instance, maybe a gallery downstairs and a residence upstairs, which normally wouldn't be allowed in that zone. Review of parking, those kinds of things. Very interesting, and it's a case-by-case basis. Permit review streamlining represents if you're getting a building permit or a permit perhaps through planning. So they encourage the applicant, if they have a historic structure, to, and it gives them an incentive to obviously stay within the guidelines of the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, et cetera. If I can come in, I can get my permit faster, and I'm willing to do this, but the review, so it helps
If I could
timeliness.
maybe comment on that. I think the Mailer landscape plan was submitted when? Yesterday and approved today. It doesn't get much quicker than that.
Yeah. But these are all things you can do without really a lot of money. They're just a process. We do the Mills Act, ta-ta. We're actually, there's not a lot of, very interestingly, how many cities use the Mills Act and how many didn't at this. And so I felt really proud of Palm Springs and your efforts to proceed with that. We do have historic building codes here in effect. Doug could probably comment more succinctly on that. I'm not as familiar with that, but we have the opportunity to use that, and we have that in place. We don't have a facade program. That would be more of a downtown element. Historic preservation grants, nor we don't have those. And transfer development rights, the last one. It's a really interesting idea. In this city, for instance, water is at a premium. So when a developer goes in to do something, a new project, he has to have so much water allocation. And say you had a historic structure on half an acre and it had this much, X amount of water, but they really didn't need X amount of water. So they have the ability to actually sell and transfer some of those rights to another project or development works in the cities in regards to high-rise, you have airspace, different things like that are called development rights. Parking can actually be a development right to a certain extent. So that's a overview. City of Sacramento also, they have a lot more money. It looks like, at least from just the presentation, able to do a lot more grants, loans, etc. Brochures, some really nice stuff. The National Trust also gave a very good presentation, and there are 3 different programs that they have available, have information on those. They're for nonprofits and government agencies. But for instance, we're looking at Francis Stevens School. There we go. Perhaps there'll be some ability to acquire money for the upkeep and maintenance.
And if I could just comment there, that was the intent of going forward with the state designation so that we could apply for grants. And we've got a significant improvement program that we're going to have to undertake up there, and we may not be able to wait for grants just because of the condition of the building relative to roof structure.
Basically, the last couple items on this, the State Historic Building Code, I addressed just briefly, but we do have this inventory completed, and the tax increment financing for smaller communities. That also, and they have a facade improvement program in the city of Napa, and so they discussed that, and we don't have that, but we have a seismic retrofit program that I guess has been completed prior to my employment here, but. And of course, we have the Mills Act. And one interesting comment that perhaps you all are aware of, but I wasn't, that the Mills Act could be used for condominiums and townhouses. So it can be used for homeowners association type properties. As I said, I have a lot of supportive documentation. I'm going to leave that on the table. And after the meeting, you're certainly welcome to browse through that. I'm going to leave a notepad, and you're welcome to also put your name on any document with a sticky, and I'll make copies for you all.
I have one quick question. In terms of the 2 items that are not applicable for Palm Springs at this time, under historic rehabilitation tax credits under A and under the Bank of America Historic Tax Credit Fund, those are not applicable for Palm Springs because a prerequisite is to be on the National Register, and we don't have any National Register.
That's exactly it. Some of these can work for properties that are in the application process with the National Register. And that was, I'd have to look actually through my notes because we're basically kind of which one that applies to. So sometimes they can work in conjunction with the application process if the state feels it's a strong possibility.
I just like to make a comment and thank Kathy for seeking out this workshop and making an effort to be there. It was one that took a personal effort on her part to help out with the travel. So she went above and beyond the call of duty on this one and brought back some very, very valuable information.
Thank you very much, Kathy. That's pretty exciting stuff, I think, for property owners. Hopefully Class 1 sites and other historic buildings as well. Well, Kathy, I guess you're up again here for agenda item number 5, Francis Stevens School, California Register of Historic Resources nomination update.
I think I discussed that earlier in the work
did.
program. I really don't have anything more to add. I do have a copy of I had to do quite a bit of extra work on that one that didn't show. You've all seen the original nomination. And then I had a response back about midsummer asking for more detail, which was fine. I had that information available in research, so it was just a matter of compiling it. But I certainly have that for anyone that would like to read the narrative. It's now a lot more. There's a lot more to it.
As with many and most government agencies, they encouraged us to just file, that they seemed to have an interest in getting a city-designated property. They told Kathy to not do a few things that were standard application requirements, and just perfectly, as most governments do, about midway through the process, they called up and said, I need all that information. So,
Can you tell-
I will also make a comment. Kathy took this on as a personal project and did a lot of work outside of normal work hours and worked weekends to take this on, and really did an exceptional job. And to get our first application on the consent calendar, is real credit to how hard she worked. It will be important, in all likelihood, to just have somebody in the audience from Palm Springs, even though it's a consent calendar item, to before the meeting, to be able to say, slip a little note to the chairman. I'm not sure how they do it, but if any questions come up on this one, having a few people in the audience from Palm Springs is always important to board members. We're going to talk to the city council and see if there's any interest, and in all likelihood, we'll ask Kathy to go to the meeting, just in case something comes up. But, typically it helps when you go before state boards for them to know it's important enough for the city to send people there. And we also recognize the importance of the state designation. So we'll keep reminding you of that.
And that's on November the 7th? Okay, well, that's before our next,
It's coming up sooner than
okay, well, maybe you could either send out a quick fax or email, Loretta, telling us where and when that's going to be, so if any of us have the time, we could, it's in Pasadena, you said.
We certainly can coordinate transportation in, and, might be a fun meeting to see, how we stack up and what's on the agenda. When we first started this, they kept saying, we don't have enough work. And now they're telling us they're just bombarded, so their marketing program worked.
What day of the week is that?
That's a Friday.
That's Friday, so that's, okay. Okay, thank you again. Just for the record and for our information, are there any resources or any properties in the Coachella Valley that are currently on the California Register or the National Register?
In regards to the Coachella Valley, I'm not sure. As I said, we actually have a national, Tahquitz Canyon is an archaeological National Register site. We also, I'm actually working with a homeowner independent of my employment in regards to getting the O'Donnell House on the National Register. So, I think we should forge through there. We can do a lot of this if we put our minds to it. You have a lot of wonderful research information available to you here. You're really fortunate. So we just have to get those homeowners interested or property owners interested.
There may be one house on the state list, or not house, but a property, I think one of the schools in Coachella, a very, very early school, I seem to recall that on a Huell Hauser, program. Yeah, but what we could do is we could check if that's something the board would like to have us check on. It'd probably be pretty quick on the internet.
Well, if you could, I'd be curious to know. Maybe you could tell us if there's anything in the Coachella Valley. Let us know.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Again, November 7th is, I think that might be a target for trying to get the Desert Sun involved. I know the council's pretty excited about this, so we'll try to get everybody kind of rallied up on that one.
Is there going to be a presentation to the council of any information about this between now and November 7th, at a council meeting that any of us should attend?
We could maybe try to do a receive and file report, or at least get the mayor to make a comment. The agenda's done for the next council meeting, and it's the last official council meeting in October. There will be an adjourned meeting, and maybe we can do a receive and file on October 29th. Quick little report, just so the council knows it's going.
I think that would be great if we could. Thank you. Thank you again, Kathy. The next item is the Historic Site Survey Process, Contacts and Consultant Report. Can you give us an update, Doug or Jing?
Basically, we forwarded all the board's recommendations from the draft reconnaissance list. Basically, Loretta went through and she highlighted each property that board members had chosen out, and we sent it directly to the consultant for them to review. Right now, they're picking through, trying to find their first 100, and they expect to be ahead of schedule with regards to filling out those primary records. But they will show staff the first 100 list, before they go ahead and fill
Now,
that out.
what is this list that I have here with some
This,
darker than some lighter?
yeah, that's what I was talking about, is the darker ones. If you look at underneath ARG recommended primary DPR form, there's initials of board members, just so it shows which board members chose which, which resource to be surveyed. And those are the grade areas. And it just made it easier for ARG to read.
I'm sorry, I'm confused. These are properties that were not on the original survey that were?
No.
They
These
were
are
on the ori-
properties that were on the original survey.
And
On
the,
the first reconnaissance list you saw?
yes?
Right, and what Loretta did is she went through and grade all the properties that each board member, you each submitted, 25, 30
Oh, okay,
recommendations, and
yes.
that's what these grayed out areas represent.
And then the additional suggestions by the
Are-
public and by the board are at the very
They're
end?
at the back, right.
So that is not a complete list. Is that the ones that they identified out of the list that they were interested in? And some of the ones that we submitted, they didn't think qualified. Is that correct?
I thought we just,
All of the properties that the board members selected that were on the list have been highlighted or shaded.
Mm-hmm.
And the very far right column, there are initials of the board members that preferred these particular properties.
Okay.
And some of the board members had additional properties that were not on the original list. And those are on the very last page, and it says additions by HSP board members. These are all the properties that were suggested that were not on the original list, so at the very end of the report.
And the majority of these properties look like the ones that were outlined in that document that Pete Maruzzi furnished us from the MONCOM. It looks like,
That could be.
okay.
Right.
But I'm looking, for instance, at the list that Bill supplied, the white tiles, 1145 North Camino Mirasol, the Spanish bungalow. That's not on the additional list.
no, some of those were forwarded directly to the consultant basically before Loretta got your written-in suggestions,
Mhm.
because we were sending them packages. It just wasn't very efficient to try and wait until a later date. I wanted to,
Oh, so they
get
have
them
all
out
of
of-
these as well as what was added
along with
onto-
everything that was collected at the meeting on September the 16th, I think it was.
Jane, do we have a list of everything the consultant has?
Yes, I do.
Okay, maybe what we need to do is just add that either as an attachment to this so that
Sure.
it's visible and something that people can take a look at. I'm not sure we need to go back in and put it in the spreadsheet format, but it could just be an additional appendix. Mr. Chairman, we did take a few names off at requests of property owners that do not want they don't hold the properties in their personal names. They do not want them in personal names, and we took their names off the references. And I just suggest you allow us to use discretion in doing that, or you will have letters from attorneys that will cause you second thoughts.
Now, you took the names off, but the properties were left on the list?
Properties are on the list,
I have no problem
just
with
the
that.
names of the current owners. And,
The board.
had I gone through and looked at it that way, the first list would have been edited that way. And, we've got to respect the fact that some people in our community have security risks, and they do not want names mentioned. And they don't hold any property in town under their current names.
I had a question regarding that. Would it make sense to have something acknowledging that there is a reason why that's
No.
not there, or no, just delete it entirely?
Just take the name off. Otherwise, it's just as good as saying, look at this one.
I have here a list of well, there's a list that was provided by Pete Maruzzi and then one by you, Bill, and then a couple of names that I added. I want to make sure you have all of these. and that
I do have it, I
Okay.
guarantee you, I have it.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other comments on the historic site survey? And when, based on my information, we're supposed to get the first 100 records by November the 24th, I think? Is that correct?
Right.
Jane, do you want to go over the consultant proposal relative to obscured properties and second visits and reviewing these additional? Just give
Well-
the board an update on that.
Yeah, basically, we asked the consultant to give us a quote, about cost and, with regards to the obscured properties. That was sort of an unexpected, part of their reconnaissance survey, sort of a second trip down here. Basically, they came back with a quote of, it was a little under $9,000, I think. And the problem we're running into is any proposal or any contract, over contract amendment over $5,000 needs to go back to council. So subsequently, we asked them to go back and perhaps reevaluate, the number of properties they're going to be looking at. This was sort of late or mid to late last week, so they're still getting back to us on that. With regards to exactly the number of properties they're going to be looking at, and they're going to try and give us an updated quote on that.
And we have funds to $5,000 worth of additional work, hopefully?
We do have some funds. You'd basically be trading out plaques for this work, but we've had a couple of years where we haven't used all the plaque money, and the council's been gracious to carry that over, recognizing that this has been traditionally an underfunded program. I think what we need to do is just carefully look at whether or not we want to do another task. I can assure you the next time we have a public review of this, somebody will come up with additional properties that we should look at, and we're just going to ask the board to think about whether or not we ask the consultant to finish the work with what you can do now, and then come back as a second phase, and take a look at properties, and we may have a second phase of work that may include actually preparing some designations, where we might just say, hey, there's a handful in here that we just want to prepare and move those forward very quickly. The challenge of bringing the consulting team back is, they have to bring multiple people. They travel very frugally. Their reimbursement expenses, they do not spend a lot of money when they're in town. But when you take a look at the hours that they have to put into, in the field, in the records, every property adds up pretty quick. So that's why the change order caught your eye. That it's another trip to Palm Springs with multiple people to be able to do it in a very short, time frame, and they have to manage their time. They can't send somebody down here for a week and let one person do it. They really need to come in and do it fairly quickly. So we're debating whether or not, we might just put another work program together that next year we come back and look at the obscured properties, as a different work effort versus doing it right now. We'll have to make a decision probably within the next week or so. If the board members have any strong feelings, you can let us know either now or later. And then the earliest we could get this on council, would be November for a contract amendment. But I think the work, eventually the work has to be done.
And would it be up to council to okay the use of banked plaque funds, for instance, for the cost of the contract?
Oh, I have to tell them where the money is and why it's not necessary.
Okay.
And we've told them that, there may be a need to augment this report. We might find some things as we go through. Whenever you look for treasures, you might find more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we found some potential treasures that, we have to go back in and evaluate. So I don't anticipate that being a particular problem. We just need to, make sure we spend the money as wisely as we can. And anytime you deal with a consultant, if you accept their first proposal, that's what you get. If you scratch your head and hem and haw, ask them to sharpen their pencil, we might get a little bit better
Right.
price. And we may ask them to work a little bit faster. Do a quick triage of properties that very quick triage in the field as to whether or not they believe we should do any more work at all, as opposed to doing what they did the first pass. But there's a couple of contingencies that we're looking at.
There were a number of these properties that were listed on the original survey as obscured that I believe they had the opportunity to go back and see based on some contacts that you had and board members had. Have those been changed on this list?
From, you mean from obscured to, no, I mean, they had the opportunity to look at, I believe, some, but not all of them.
Not all, I know,
No.
but there were.
That update has not been made.
Yeah.
So this is the original report. We have not gotten their update on the properties that they actually had the
Because I know,
opportunity
like,
to look
I
at.
think Casa Cody, they were probably able to see that.
And if they hit Casa Cody and Frank was home, they only saw one property that day.
Okay, that's probably, maybe true. Well, thank you, Loretta, for making those additions. And any other comments on the survey at this point? We'll look forward to a little more at the next meeting and hopefully those first 100 records by the end of November. Next item on the agenda is one of our standard items, discussion of city's historic preservation ordinance. Item number 7, any updates on that at this time?
Mr. Chairman, we've already given you an update on that item in the work program.
Okay. Okay, moving on to some of the reports. Item number 8, Palm Springs Preservation Foundation, Board Member Scott.
The Palm Springs Preservation Foundation will be hosting an event on Saturday, November 15th, celebrating the Spanish colonial revival architecture of the city. It's going to be a very unique tour, a bus tour. We'll be starting at a house called Invernada, which was built in the 1920s and is one of the great examples of Spanish colonial revival. The house has never been open to the public before. It's had very limited number of owners, and it's in remarkable condition. We'll then be boarding buses and touring other properties, both commercial and residential, and ending up at Casa La Luna, which is the Mercer House, Johnny Mercer House, for a cocktail reception. The event will be from 1 to 6 on Saturday, the 15th of November. Notification will be sent out to our membership and those on our mailing list this week, and it will be limited registration. There is space for approximately 100 people. It is $100 for members of the foundation and $125 for non-members. You can go onto the website, which is pspf.net, or you can contact the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation directly. Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman? Even though I don't think it's probably absolutely necessary, if it would be possible for the Preservation Foundation to maybe write a letter to SHPO in support of the Francis Stevens designation, so they have a fresh letter in their file. And if the Historic Society could possibly do that in Palm Springs ModCom, it always helps to have fresh correspondence that people realize that it's being tracked locally.
Well, could we get the address and contact information and have that sent out to
Sure.
contacts here? I'll make sure that Pete at ModCom gets it. And I think he would probably do that, even though it's an older building than they.
Yeah, I mean, just 2 sentences.
Yeah.
They just count them.
Mhm.
I mean, at the state level, remember, they just count. They've got a huge agenda and a big packet, and hopefully one of their members will say, "Hey, we got 3 new letters on this one," and it does help if there's any questions.
Thank you, Board Member Scott. Palm Springs Historical Society update, Board Member Bledsoe. He is not here today. Does anyone else have any information on the Palm Springs Modern Committee? I'll take care of that update. The Palm Springs Modern Committee is planning a home tour, November the 8th, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., with a reception at 7 p.m. in the evening. And it is not limited to Palm Springs. There are 8 houses on the tour at the moment, including the Frank Sinatra House, which was built in 1947 by Stuart Williams as the architect. A lot of these I have not seen, so I'm going, and it sounds exciting. The Kinniston House, 1957, which is in Rancho Mirage, also a Stuart Williams home, and was recently featured as the Mates House in the cable show Boy Meets Boy, if you all know that one. The Jaffe House in Rancho Mirage, which is the 1962 William Cody House. The Morris House in Rancho Mirage, 1969 William Cody House. And several condominiums at the Sandpiper Complex, and then some other homes as well. The cost is $50 for members, $65 for non-members. Tickets are available by mail. If you are interested, the best way to find out about it is to go onto the website www.psmodcom.com. And it should be an exciting event on the 8th of November. So, that's the update from the Modern Committee. And then item number 11, Palm Springs Brief History and Historical Guide update. Do we have an update at this point?
Jane, you want to give it? I think we're very close.
I think we're done, right? Yeah.
November the 8th,
Well,
Saturday.
we actually have, yeah, it's actually ready to go to print. Jim Isterman took a last look at it yesterday, and I think all the edits are done. And unless anybody, I'm not going to ask that, actually. We're done, yeah. It's going to go to print.
Could I take a look at it just to see it?
Sure,
Or do you have the
yeah.
information?
Or you want to pull this out?
I'll do it after the meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's been through a rigorous editing process, and, there had to be some executive editing because we had people that wanted changes that were in conflict with, what other people believed the history was, and, we had to kind of go back at times and look at who the source information was. But I think that most everybody will be pleased, and as with any historic piece or art piece, the fact that it generates a little discussion as to whether or not it's perfectly correct only adds to its value.
And makes it much more
We
interesting.
have to have that intellectual debate.
You can pull that off.
Perhaps this is another opportunity that we could get at least a mention in some of the local press once this is finished and updated and revised. So just a thought.
We have lots of people that are expecting it, and, I suspect we'll sell a lot this season.
I hope so.
And with the new visitor center, coming on board, we'll, really have to keep up on making sure we've got it in print. And the good news is our new printing presses allow us to print smaller quantities and still have the same cost efficiency. So we don't have to have 5,000 print at once and then try to find a place to store them.
It's probably too late for this issue, but I think it'd be nice if we indicated which ones of the properties actually have Class 1 status. I don't know that we do we? Or some of the properties in there do not.
Well, we actually did that, and when we went through, it turned out that all but 8 in this guide are already Class 1 or Class 2 sites, so we actually did the reverse, added an asterisk to the index and actually, notated the ones that weren't locally designated sites, because otherwise it made not a lot of sense to have, 50 different asterisks in the index. It just became almost unreadable, so we did it in the reverse one.
I would also, in terms of press opportunities, that once they are printed, we might want to send them to travel editors of the LA Times and daily newspapers in the area. Not only help us increase, awareness of what's happening architecturally here, but also maybe boost tourism just a tad. So I would recommend that we, make those available.
Maybe when we sit down and have our little meeting, we can take a look at
Talk
that
about it.
network distribution. You can help us with that.
Our
Great.
tourism department would probably issue a press release on behalf of the guide.
They tend to send this out to everybody. I mean, every piece they get that they think they can get some legwork out of,
Yeah.
they automatically do that, so.
With the republication, the introduction of the new guide, edited guide would probably, I'm sure Jeff would do that for us. Under board and staff reports, I have a couple of things that I wanted to add. First of all, could we add as a regular agenda item a report from the Architecture and Design Council of the Palm Springs Desert Museum? And the contact of that will be, for that, will be Jim Isherman. He is not here today, but I spoke to him, and they are the ones who are sponsoring the reception on the 18th of October at the Idris House, which is by invitation. But I'd like to get an update from them. The second item that I wanted to quickly discuss, I know that our historic site number 23, which is Community Church, 284 South Cahuila Road, there's been a number of things before the Planning Commission, I think, about the redevelopment of some of that property, and I don't know if any plans have been discussed about what to do with the designated property, but could we perhaps get a report on that at the next meeting? Or?
Well, I can give you a report. The designated property, there are no plans for it on file yet. The property owner is intending to renovate it into a bed and breakfast inn. The more contemporary church, is slated for redevelopment on this site, as is one fairly old home that has been kind of on the interior pretty well beat up, and there's some question whether or not it could maybe be relocated. The structural integrity hasn't been evaluated. In a neighborhood meeting on that property, some of the residents asked if the older house could be incorporated into the new project, and it just doesn't work economically to try to keep an old house. You lose just too much on a small site, and the developer's really coming in with a project that underdevelops the site relative to probably its maximum use, as well as the property value that he's probably had to pay for it. I think most of the neighbors were understanding that that's pretty difficult to come in on a little tiny site like that and leave a house. But they did suggest, and we'll take a look at whether or not the house could be relocated. The developer certainly is capable of evaluating structural integrity and whether or not something can be relocated, and seemed receptive if it could be done. But nobody's really gotten in there to look at the structural aspects, and because of the amount of wood in the house and knowing what happens when somebody hasn't really taken care of wood in houses in the desert, and having watched many renovation projects where there's one stud left in the entire house that can be kept because of termite damage, I'm not real optimistic that that's going to be a viable house to relocate. But we're taking a look at that.
How old is the house?
30s.
So that makes it a Class 3 site.
It has never shown up on anybody's survey. It's not on the current list, didn't come up in the public review. Well, maybe it came up in the tennis club comments. I'd have to look at the list of that came in. But, at this point, we're starting the environmental review of the property, and, the neighborhood seems quite pleased with the project, and architecturally, it's a, in staff's opinion, pretty strong project for that little neighborhood.
I assume that when the Class 1 site, when plans come around for that we will certainly be involved in.
Without a doubt.
So we look forward to that.
And they're looking at maybe trying to provide some parking on the condominium site or the Class 1 site, so it becomes a little bit easier and more viable since it has no parking. So the owner's really taking a look at some options to make sure that at the end of the day we've got a viable church property as well as a neighboring project that deals with the fact that you might have to have a little mixed use relationship on parking.
Thank you, Doug. You had some comments. Board Member Chesbach wanted to go back to one of the agenda items at number 11.
Thank you. Number 11 on the architectural guide. I trust that staff let everyone see my revisions, being I'm part of this. Is that true?
The revisions that you've written on
the cover and the wording on the cover.
Yeah, we did review that.
So did everybody in this room see it?
I thought we did. Well, I looked at it with Tracy Conrad.
Because I didn't really hear from Tracy, or I didn't hear from anybody working on it, but now I feel that that we are the board and our name is on it as the current board. And I just felt that it was lacking integrity and put great effort into something that was more appropriate. So I trust that everybody on the board did see it.
I don't know if I...
See, and I think it's very important.
Okay.
I mean,
What
unless
was it?
it's on the
Were you
press
suggesting a
business
change in the title of
I
the
believe it was a
document?
change in the font of the
Oh,
title.
it's not it's the font,
Yeah,
it certainly was the title. And as opposed to people golfing and calling it a brief something,
Yeah, it's called the Brief History and Architectural Guide, and
could maybe people see the things that I actually did submit? And maybe the board could see it before our name is printed on it and before it's submitted to the press and to the media, and maybe it could be more appropriate, and then at least the board could decide what our name is going to be on, representing our city.
Jane, do you have that handy?
I don't have it here right now, no.
Can you maybe go get it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, while Jing does that, my next thing that I want to discuss briefly is that just in a visual look at the tramway gas station, I note that the wall has been partially cut down, but I also note that it's still quite a bit higher than we were led to believe it was going to be. And I don't know if there's more to come off or what the status is, but I'm concerned about that because I actually went back and looked at the minutes from the October 8th meeting, and this is reading from the minutes. Mr. O'Donnell, the architect, pointed out the site plan, the locations of the 32-inch grade differences from the curb or sidewalk, the existing wall at the existing height, which is 24 inches, then the wall behind varies from 18 to 24 inches above the low wall. The absolute height of that wall could be greater than 36 inches as seen from the sidewalk, but it is mediated by having the low wall in front, which gives a stepping effect. And I looked at the secondary wall and actually measured it, and it measures 49 to 50 inches, and I'm wondering if it's going to come down more or if they're going to come back.
No, let me give you an explanation, and you're going to have to, understand what happens in construction projects. When O'Donnell and company looked at that wall and reported to the Planning Commission as well as the Historic Site Preservation Board, they did not know where all the bond beams were. And after looking at the wall and its structure, a field determination had to be made as to where the best place to cut it would be, and it was determined to cut it a little bit higher than a little bit lower. I've got to tell you that, with all due respect for the board, the operational concern of the people that have to operate and maintain and protect the liability aspect of that building. Not a person wanted that wall as low as you wanted that wall. The city council approved the specs, relative to the construction of the building, and we had to make a field determination. There is a great concern that if you don't have a perimeter on that, because we're changing it from a gas station, art gallery, to now a public building that's going to be tourism driven, that's going to have a lot of different people and a lot of kids that are going to get out of the car and want to run around because it's going to be their first stop. The feeling was to err on the high side. And the question is, as you're approaching the building, is the building really obscured by the wall? Okay, I've not looked at it. Okay, if you'd like to make a recommendation to the city council, you can, but there's no money in the budget to cut it a second time, and the council would have to.
I also went yesterday and looked at it, and in driving by and then walking along the sidewalk, at points it's 6 feet high or higher.
That's
and
high. Okay.
I object strongly to the height of the wall being that high. I think it blocks the view of the gas station from any pedestrians or from anyone driving by, and somehow I think we were misled on this. If if there had been an issue about, I would have gone, I'm sure the board could have had a meeting, we could have gone up and looked at the situation and worked with them, but it was a big issue from the beginning about the height of that wall, and I just want to say I object to it. And I'd like to see a different solution.
Or the solution that we all planned on, I think would be more.
Well, I
Okay.
kind of agree with...
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
It's not on your agenda. You can ask reports and ask for a response. You cannot take action. You cannot give direction. City attorney would stop the discussion in a heartbeat. If you would like to have a special meeting, we can call a special meeting, but you can't give us direction. You can't tell us your opinion other than there's a concern. And
But
otherwise, you're going to be...
weren't we instructed as to what the height of the wall would be, and a change has been made to the height that we were not instructed about, so we are, at least I am, objecting to it.
Okay, and we need to add that to an agenda to have a discussion to give us direction, or I'm going to be explaining to the city attorney why you went beyond the scope of what's on the agenda.
But when we see when we see a historic site, such as a building on Palm Canyon that put in an inappropriate door in, we can bring it up as a issue, and some action can be taken.
And then we
here,
put it on the agenda for discussion. I mean, that's what we have to do. If
Well,
you'd like-
my concern is if we put it on the agenda for the next meeting, that the center will be finished.
Mr. Chairman, you can call a special meeting. And that's what I would suggest that you do.
Well, I'd like to just make some comments, not about the property in particular, but just more about the process. And the process was that the site is a historic one site, and that we were given some information that was very controversial, and we all agreed as we thought it should be done. And changes were made, which my understanding is we might all agree to, but we were not even part of the process. And I object to that, because it was a big issue, and not about...
Mr. Chairman, could I just, my role is to make sure that you don't get in trouble with what's on the agenda and what's not. And with all due respect, you can call a special meeting for tomorrow, if you would like.
Would the board like to have a...
We do need to have it on the agenda, because you're going beyond raising a question to expressing your concerns, and, very close to giving me direction, which isn't on the agenda. And I don't like to be a bureaucrat relative to procedure, but in the past, this board has gone off the agenda, gotten itself in the wrong position relative to what you can and can't do, and it's had long-term consequences. And the one reason I come to every one of the meetings is to make sure that that doesn't happen again. There's ways for you to do what you want to do, and to be effective, we have to do it correctly. And that's my only concern.
Would the board like to call a special meeting to discuss this? Is it worth?
yes, but I'd also like to have if it's the architect or whoever from.
If you call a special meeting, I'll have to bring the entire team in so that we can discuss what happened.
Right.
And that way you get all the information, and you don't want somebody to say you've already made up your mind because you had the discussion today. That's just not the place the board wants to get into if there's a concern about a property. Let's do it procedurally correct.
Well, wouldn't procedurally correct be for the change to be brought before the board? Isn't that procedurally correct?
Could have occurred had we stopped the project.
We could have called a special meeting.
Yeah, and the time frame that the decision had to be made, it was difficult to get a special meeting made. So, I mean, we do construction projects all over town where we have to make field decisions, and this one was made knowing that there could be some concerns. So let's have a special meeting. Let me bring all the people and the facts in, and then you can have a discussion, and you can take action, and we can take that action to the council. That's the appropriate way for you to handle this.
Well, I'm sorry.
I have a quick question on protocol. In terms of the process for changes in construction that are done to Class 1 historic sites going forward, is that something that we can discuss, just the process, not relative to this building, but the general process?
Not today.
Okay.
I mean, again, You're limited to what's on your agenda, and the agenda has to be specific enough so the public knows what you're going to talk about in detail.
Well, when we-
Asking me question, could you know, what happened is one thing. Having me respond and tell you what happened is another. Getting to what can we do about it is, that's when we have to set it for an agenda.
I
And
had
we
a
can do that,
question.
you know, we'll take a look at the special meeting requirements. I think we need 24 hours notice, so we can have one tomorrow. And, you know, with the chairman's concurrence, what I'll do is make sure I can get the team here, so you don't have a special meeting and people can't be here because of schedules. So
Could
can
we
have
put
it
on
this
the
week.
agenda item, an agenda item, if we, when we do have the special meeting, a discussion of how issues like this are handled? Or is that something we should put on our next meeting, regular meeting agenda?
You can have me put whatever you want on the agenda, and I think we would first put this particular item on, and I have a feeling that would probably cover most of your concerns, because you're going to debate an example, and if you want a secondary item having to do with the process, we can certainly put that on.
And as part of a special meeting, would we need to have a quorum?
Mhm.
Okay.
I had a concern, you know, I know there's going to be a great expense in having a special meeting and bringing, you know, all these people in for this. Do we have an opportunity to at all, you know, take a look at the situation briefly before the decision's made to call a special meeting? You know, like, for example, I haven't seen this situation. So to me, it's like an emergency item. I haven't seen it. Did we have the opportunity to evaluate that at all before, you know, the special meeting's called?
Perhaps get some kind of staff report as to why the decision was made, and maybe then we can make that decision without having to have
We
it.
can put together a little outline for the chairman. I mean, the chairman makes a decision on special meetings.
My thought is not that it's a knee-jerk, because it's a very legitimate concern, but I would like to see it and have a thought about it, but that's just my opinion.
Could you do that for me, and then I'll take a look at it?
What we'll do is we'll try to put together some information. I'll also double-check the project schedule to make sure that if there is an urgency to do it this week, we just call the meeting and do it. But we'll put together a little bit of information from the project manager's perspective, and give that to the chairman and fax it out to the members. The chairman needs to make the decision. And just remember that the board cannot all talk to the chairman about this item in the decision-making process to call a special meeting. 3 members max can talk about anything outside of a meeting. Other than that, if you get over 3, that's a meeting.
What kind of timeline do you think that would?
We can do a special meeting in 24 hours notice, so what we could do is take a look at maybe trying to get you the information tomorrow morning, and then if need be, have a meeting, either Friday or early next week.
And
I'm
is
not
that-
sure the time frame is going to make much difference between now and then, but I'll call the project manager immediately.
And as part of that, could we look at alternatives to lowering the wall and cost, or is that in the information you're going to provide? Or are you just going to provide information
Well-
on why the decision was made?
Oh, we're going to, we can give you the cost to cut the wall. I mean, to do another cut, it's the same cost that we just spent. And cutting concrete is,
Well, I don't want to sound, it's just such a big issue, both for the public and all the people that we've talked to, and I would like to pursue it and see if we, and I believe also with some of the people who are going to be occupying the center, it was a big issue as well. So, anyway, thank you.
okay.
Those are all the additional items that I had. Any other board or staff reports? All questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, we have,
This is if you want me to just pass it around, this is basically showing Board Member Chespak's addendum to the cover and the original cover. If you want, just.
While we're doing that, do you have a scheduled completion date for the renovation at the gas station? I thought we had said October, but obviously.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not directly involved in the actual construction timeframe. We'll get you that in the update.
It's funny, because I was going to ask about the tramway station, and then I decided not to, and then I'm glad you brought that up.
Am I allowed to say anything in regard to this? I mean, can we get to that, can we stay on that agenda question now that it's being handed out? For one, I say the city, I say City of Palm Springs, and I call it a historic architectural guide, as opposed to Palm Springs Brief History Architectural Guide. And I move golfing people off, and I show the building. That was my intent. And these are images that are readily available, and it's just a matter of just changing what the type says. So that's actually why this was presented around. And I was assured that it would be handed out to everybody, as well as Tracy, who does not sit on the board anymore, who was on the past board, who's now is on planning, just so that.
Well, in the essence of time, because we are at the 10 o'clock hour, how much of a history is there in the guide? I don't remember. There's not much about the history of Palm Springs, is there? So I personally
Well-
rather like the title, but the new title myself. But I don't know how much of a this would indicate there's a history of when the city was founded, and is that in there? I don't recall it being in there. Let's look and see. There it is. So, well, then I think my personal opinion is the brief history should stay in the title, because there is a history of the city, a brief history and architectural guide. I don't know how everyone else feels, but I like the way it is. I don't so much care for the golfers on the cover, but tighten the shot.
I
perhaps.
think the golfers, that's probably an original image. I don't think we did any computer imagery. That's an original image of the old Mirador Hotel with a putting green. So, you know.
It's historical.
Coming from, and I think that Ron's image is a little bit narrower, a little more focused, but I think being appealing to a broader group, having golfers in there is, there's so many people that are fascinated by golf that I think that it's going to create a broader interest. Even though I agree with you that for me, I like the narrower interpretation. I think for the visitor serving group, I think that the broader appeal it might be more effective. But I do see your side.
Well, thank you.
Well, I see both sides of the argument. And in the essence of time, if we change it, I guess it's going to delay the printing again, is it?
Well, typesetting the title, probably not that much. The image,
I was just on the committee. That's going to be.
yeah, I mean, it's the
But I want everybody's input.
board's pleasure.
Do I hear a motion to change the photograph or change the title?
I actually prefer the original photograph, because it is a historic photograph of the El Mirador Hotel. It would be nice to have newer typeface, but if it delays getting this thing out, I'd say let's do it the next time.
You want to put that in the form of a motion?
Yeah, so moved.
Second?
That we keep it as is and consider changes with the next printing.
Well, let's see the two, hold them up and we'll look at them from a distance.
But if I could ask in the future to be somebody that's working with this, to have some critique or to have some addition, that it couldn't be saved till the 14th hour to where we all have to do this and panic at the end, when I submitted things in proper time and I was assured that they were going to be submitted to everybody so that we all could have enough time to look at it or adjust it or have anybody else's further suggestions. Because this is what this represents us.
That's a very good point, and I appreciate obviously you did work on this, a lot of work to make this out, and I appreciate that. And I would ask that when we have submissions, particularly by someone that's in charge of the committee, if we could bring those to the attention of the board, I'd thank you.
And I have one question in terms of protocol
you.
on that. I'm imagining the best way to ensure that that happens is that in any correspondence with staff, that there's a CC field on something that says CC Historic Site Preservation Board members. Would that help ensure that those things are then given individually to members?
We can try to do that.
Okay.
If you recall, when we started this update, the idea was to have, you know, an extremely fast turnaround. And, you know, it's been going on for a long, long time. You know, I think I think everybody got anxious to try to get this printed. And believe me, our customers are pounding at the door to get the new one.
Well, and my question there is just to kind of address Ron's concern of wanting all of us to see it and us not seeing. I'm sure it was, you know, an oversight, but if there's anything we can do to ensure that, you know, things are distributed widely, you know, I'd like to know what that is, so.
Well, a motion's been made to leave the cover the same, at least for this printing. Seconded? Anyone second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, well, for this printing, thank you very much for your input, but because of the foul up in communication, unfortunately, we just want to leave it like it is. Any other items to discuss? Well, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.